Hey guys, welcome back to Young Americans Abroad. My name is Austin.
And my name is Patrick.
And guys, welcome back to our show.
Yeah, we got AVT and PAT. They talking about young Americans overseas. We got Mckenzie, Pulisic, Reina, and Des. Got that red, white, and blue. USA on the crest from England, Germany, from Belgium to Spain. Racking up all the medals on the trophy train. Got one thing on their mind, with skill and some luck. One day we can say we will win the World Cup.
Well, guys, it is great to be back with you today. And Pat, we have a lot to talk about, right? So this episode is going to be focused mostly on the September USMNT roster. And, this is the final roster that's been announced, before the World Cup. So got a lot to talk about today, Pat. But first, how are you feeling about it? What is your initial reactions with this roster?
I am excited, Austin. I don't think we'll get into it. Major surprises there. A few debates and talking points to go through, but it's kind of hitting me now, and I'm sure it's hitting all of you. And this is it. This is like do or die. This is the camp, final preparation, some friendlies here, and then back to the hectic club schedule that they have going on. And then, man, I can't believe it's already the end of September. The World Cup will be here before we know it.
Yeah, and we'll have that roster announcement too. I think ESPN or
Oh
one of the
yeah, that's
television
right.
companies is going to put together a production of it and it'll be televised. So that'll be kind of a cool event leading up to the World Cup as well. I'm sure we'll have a lot of anxiety around that day, nervousness, but overall, yeah, kind of like you said, not too many surprises on this roster. Some players that are out with injury, right? Even some that were announced after the roster came out. So some other players get an opportunity once more, right? That maybe they wouldn't have gotten if those injuries, didn't occur. So I guess today we'll go kind of group by group and just outline, who's in each group for this upcoming September window, and then kind of talk about the players we're excited to see, which players maybe have gotten snubbed, and then take a look at those games coming up, starting with Japan on Friday. So Pat, do you want to start us off with the goalkeepers and kind of tell us who Greg called up?
Yeah, let's do it. Take it away with the goalkeepers. We have Ethan Horvath, my boy here in Luton Town. I got Sean Johnson, as well as Matt Turner. So I think the notable omission we have to talk about, right, is no Zack Stefan. Now, there's been some reports, right, and Bertha mentioned, I think he's had a knee injury, a slight knock there. But what's interesting is this past weekend, we're filming this on Tuesday, there, September 20th, this past weekend for Middlesbrough, Stefan actually started and played the whole game in a 0-0 draw. Looked a little, I heard reports there, some slight hobbling on the pitch, but powered through, got the clean sheet. So just kind of interesting to see that he's not on that roster. I don't know if he's just getting care. Middlesbrough taking it lightly. Just kind of an interesting conflicting of reports. But nonetheless, not really surprised by the other options. Austin, I know your boy Gaga, you were hoping to see maybe sneak in there for a camp. Looking unlikely there for the World Cup.
I know.
But yeah, not too much of a surprise. What are your thoughts on the keepers?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty, pretty vanilla, right? Based on what, Greg's viewpoint is. I think Sean Johnson, makes a lot of sense. And with Zack Stefan, like you said, pretty much out injured. Again, shocked to see him start this weekend, but, him not being on this roster, I don't think really surprises anyone. So, it looks like, Matt Turner is going to be the guy we're going to have to rely on, for the World Cup. I think, with Zack Stefan having so many issues this past year, I think it's really kind of, put that onus on Matt to step up. And I think going into the World Cup, it's going to be his job, right? He's kind of earned it with, his consistency of play. And, with not playing so much at Arsenal right now, he's really going to have to, stay sharp in these next few months. And I think, we should look to see that he looks sharp in these two friendly games.
Right, exactly. That's critical. Like you said, Turner isn't getting that ideal game time at Arsenal. It's the club's in fantastic form right now in the Premier League. But with Europa, we saw him there. The other cup competitions coming up. it's got to be a lot of rotation, right? And some opportunities. And again, he's training with some of the best, but you could say that with Stefan, right? He was in that Guardiola setup and looked shaky when he got on the pitch at some occasions. Now,
Yeah, it's true.
not comparing the player to player there, but keepers, you want them playing and in form. So just a slight concern, but we know Turner's ability. So excited to see him in this camp. And then I think, Austin, I do want to just give a shout out to my guy Horvath. He's really locked down this spot at Luton Town. Obviously not the top team in the championship, but he's looked good. He's really controlling, his commanding the back line there. Looks good in the aerial duels there, keeping out some pretty impressive shots, right? We know his shot stopping ability, cleaning up on some of his mistakes. So he's getting consistent game time, and I want to give him a shout there because it's tough. I think it's between him and Johnson to get that spot into the World Cup. And I think Ethan, in my opinion, my biased opinion, should be number 3.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like going back to that game he came in, the Mexico game, a few years ago or a year ago now. I think you see the team, really likes him and rallies around him. So, I'm all for him getting that third spot. But, like Greg said too, Sean Johnson has played really well in MLS this year. He's a keeper who can also distribute the ball somewhat decently. And like I said, playing in great form right now, and is also maybe worthy of a look for that third goalkeeper spot. So I guess we'll have to see. Hopefully we don't, see either of them in these 2 games. I really think we need to give Matt Turner as much game time as possible, right?
100%.
This is more reps, so I'll be a little not concerned, but a little surprised, I guess, if we see, one of those other 2 keepers at any point in this camp. But I think goalkeepers are looking pretty much set, right? We feel like we know who the players are going to be for that position. Yeah. What about defenders, Pat? I know with some of these injuries now, it could change some things.
This is interesting, right? And where some of the debate comes in. So we'll start here with the defenders, 9 in. Reggie Cannon, right? Serginho Dest with that move to Milan.
Yeah.
We got Aaron Long, as well as Joe Scally. On top of that, Sam Vines, which we haven't seen in a while. Of course, Yedlin, Zimmerman, who aren't surprises. And then with some injuries, right? To CCV, to Chris Richards, unfortunately, that has opened up the opportunities for Mark Mckenzie, having a fantastic season with Genk, as well as Eric Palmer-Brown over in France. So EPB, right, our guy. Great to see them in this camp to kind of get back with the national team, get back in the flow. But it is tough to see some of those injuries. I think the first point I wanted to really bring up was Chris Richards, right? Obviously, Palace is a good move, right? Very competitive, especially with the starting pairing they have. Maybe not getting the most ideal, game time for Richards, but somebody I think that really could have pushed Long for that spot alongside Zimmerman. It just sounds like Zimmerman, even MLS form or not, is kind of locked in, Greg's guy there. I really think Long has been in pretty poor form, so I'm curious to see how he does in this national team camp and in some friendly times. But Richards, I was really disappointed with the injuries. Hopefully it's not anything major. And he's back there playing for Palace and part of the World Cup squad, because I think he really could be that number 2, if not number 3, Austin.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I really think these injuries could change the landscape, right? Chris Richards, it seems like every camp just is not healthy enough to make a roster, which is concerning, especially going into a World Cup too. You want a player who's been in this camp environment and can kind of rise to, or just be familiar enough to be able to rise to the occasion in a camp like this. And missing out on another one right before the World Cup, I don't think will really do him wonders for his chances of making the World Cup roster. I do think, based on the club he's at, right, Crystal Palace is a good team and a great league. But when you talk about Mark Mckenzie, right, Mark McKenzie's playing really well in Belgium right now. This is an opportunity for him again, right? He's always kind of been in around the center back group, but with Miles Robinson being out now, again, with some more of these injuries, I think this could be a really big opportunity for him to kind of step up and take advantage, of this chance, right? and like you said, some of the form between Aaron Long and Walker Zimmerman hasn't been so great. So, who's to say in this camp, Greg doesn't try and figure out again which center back partnership makes the most sense. And if certain players are not in form and other players are, like Mckenzie, then yeah, maybe those players kind of, rise into the starting lineup. I think we'll have to see kind of, what that first lineup is during this window. I think you could very well see it being Walker Zimmerman, Aaron Long. I think you could see it being, Walker Zimmerman, Mark Mckenzie. Maybe EPB stakes a claim too in this camp. I really do think with the injuries, the, center back position's kind of wide open.
Yeah, I'm just hoping Greg's stubbornness there, and you can see Long has not been in great form. You could argue right Zimmerman as well, but the Long and Zimmerman, it seems like the likely pairing for the games, and that just concerns me a little bit there. So I'd love to see, like you said, some of those other players, like Mark has been, since he's won that spot, right, the last 6 or 7 games for Genk, really impressive second there. He's had one of the higher foot mob ratings and made the Belgian team of the week. He's really picked it up in terms of his challenges, right? Winning aerial duels, ground duels. Maybe his passing, right, and threading the needle there isn't the best, from some of our ball-playing center backs, but he's still improving there. I think his ceiling is really high, so I'm excited about that. Now, Austin, I do want to talk about the outside backs, right? Anthony being injured is a huge concern. That really leaves us short in left back. You could switch over Dest. And Dest isn't even, he's in concerning form over Milan, right? He subbed in and gave up a penalty in like 4 or 5 minutes against, again, a surging Napoli. Napoli is just unbelievable right now. But nonetheless, that's not an ideal start there in Serie A. So he's still finding his way, confidence there after the Barca situation, a little concerning. But even if you put him on the left, kind of getting in the same spaces as Pulisic or those other wingers, right? And that's just not his number one spot, right? So Sam Vines coming in is interesting. Antwerp, right? Same Mckenzie, but Antwerp's actually number one. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't know if they've lost a game yet in the league, or maybe they've had a few. I have to double check that, but they're first. Sam Vines has started all of those games. He's looked very, very impressive. Some have said he's kind of still that same old Vines that we've seen in Colorado, but I can agree to also disagree with that because it is a higher level. And he's still proving it there. Again, winning that spot, playing very consistent, having solid ratings. Maybe not the strongest, crossing and getting forward compared to an Anthony, right? It's hard to compare. But this is an opportunity for him to stake his claim at pure left back. So I'm interested to see that. And then the Scally situation, Austin. Flexing to right or left, he's looked fantastic. Over the week against Leipzig, had a really good performance. He's really taken the Bundesliga to storm this season. And just, I feel like we've seen a lot of growth and maturity from him. And this is kind of like his redemption camp, per se. I don't know if I want to go that far because it was friendly in Uruguay, right? That's a tough situation to come into. But I really think he has a lot to prove. And he's a guy who's going to fight relentlessly if he can make that spot to Qatar. So I think that's going to be a battle, that Vines and Scally there.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, again, kind of like the center backs, who starts at left back, against Japan. Is it going to be one of the natural left backs? And I say that with a grain of salt too, because Joe Scally, right? We've seen him kind of play more on the right. So, will it be Sam Vines? Like you said, Antwerp's 9-0 right now, Pat. So
9-0. Wow.
They're definitely rolling. Or is it going to be Serginho Dest moving over to left back, right? There's 4 right backs on this roster. So does, maybe Greg Berhalter see Serginho more as an option on the left with no Anthony Robinson. So I think, that's going to be really interesting. And kind of like you said, Joe Scally's enjoyed a really, good start to the season. I think is going to be a mainstay in this national team for many years. But again, we're not exactly sure where it's going to be, right? Is it going to be on the right or the left? Is he better suited for a wingback role if we kind of switch formations? Are we going to see any of that, switch in formations for, these games here? We've heard Greg talk about approaching games differently depending on, our opponents and things like that. So, I think there's a lot of question marks at this, left back position specifically with no Anthony Robinson, and also just at the, outside back position in general, right? Like, I can't imagine us once Anthony Robinson's healthy taking, 5 or 6 outside backs, right? We'll probably only take 4. I'm hoping. I don't think we really should take more than that. So yeah, it should be interesting. I'm just looking forward to Japan, I guess.
Yeah, no, I am as well, because Japan's a really unique team to play against. They have a lot of quality players. You saw their roster come out, and
great test
over Europe. Yeah, really technical. So they're going to come across some pretty pacey, some very shifty, elusive attackers there. So that'll be a true test.
Yeah, I think that game will really give us a good data point, right, with some of these players, and we'll see if we're able to rise up to the challenge. So now I want to move into midfielders. So again, to go through the list a little bit, and I don't think, Pat, this list was really that surprising, right? This was probably the tamest list of based on position group of players that were selected. So to start us off, we got it is a pretty strong group. I will agree with you there. To start us off, we've got Kellen Acosta, Tyler Adams, Luca De La Torre, Weston McKennie, Alec Tillman, and then Yunus Musa was called up to this roster, but unfortunately will have to miss due to injury. And Johnny Cardoso gets called up in his place. So really interesting, Pat, to see him kind of get called back into camp, right? We haven't really seen him since, I believe, the U23 team, a little over a year ago, right? I think maybe he had, 1 or 2 more camps since then, but he really has kind of been out in the weeds a little bit. And, recently has really performed well for Internacional, actually scored a few goals this past month. So has really enjoyed a fine run of form. And, Greg wanted to kind of see him again. So I think it'll be curious to see kind of how he fits in with this group. But, the biggest takeaway, I think, is, again, having a healthy Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie when you look at this midfielder group, right? So no Yunus Musa, but those 2 players are clearly going to be kind of the rocks in our team, right? Those 2 are going to be, the main leaders of this team with Christian Pulisic. So we haven't seen them play together much recently, right? Adams has been injured at times. McKennie's been injured at times. So I think it's really positive to see them back in camp together and healthy once again. McKennie right now, right? Form is pretty good at Juventus, right? He just had a pretty good game over the weekend. Juve are not doing great, Pat. I think you put out a tweet recently saying it's a little brutal to watch them. They're not having a great go of it.
Not a great Sunday morning. There's always hope, right? You see the names on the list, but gosh, they are the opposite of a cohesive unit right now.
Yeah, it's a little brutal, unfortunately. Definitely had higher hopes going into the season, but so that's kind of McKennie's situation. And Tyler Adams, right, Pat? He's killing it at Leeds. So probably in the best form of his life. So I really think it'll be cool to see them, back in camp, both getting significant game time, in these games. Luca De La Torre, right, not getting the game time we were hoping for, probably going into the season at Celta Vigo, but nonetheless, he's still getting some minutes here and there. I think this camp is going to be really important for him to, again, kind of cement himself as part of this group. I don't think things are going to change. I think he's almost guaranteed himself a spot on the World Cup roster now. But again, I think with Yunus Musa out, is he going to be the guy who steps into, the starting lineup to replace him? Is Greg going to go with him, or is Greg going to go with someone like Kellen Acosta that's maybe a little bit more defensive, and kind of replace Musa there? So I think Luca De La Torre needs to have a strong camp here in September. I also thought it was great to see, Alec Tillman back, right? Had a great start to the season with Rangers, right, Pat? He was killing it there, scoring goals, looking like the star that we hope he is, but has kind of cooled off recently. So I thought it was good to see, Greg call him back into the camp. And I think, like you said, Pat, to start, this part of the segment, this is a strong group of players.
Yeah, this is the core, Austin, and I'm really excited about this because even a Gio Reyna, who's even listed in this group, could potentially fall on that, right?
Or Brendan Aronson, right? We saw Brendan kind of play a role in midfield recently. So
yeah, seriously, no, all good points, and I'm just I'm excited to, like you said, Adams, McKennie, that health, right, has been a factor, having them together. And then, I think Alec Tillman, now, obviously, like you said, isn't maybe the greatest form right now. And Rangers has had a tough COVID since the old firm derby, and obviously Champions League being back has been a rude awakening.
Ever since lunch with Greg.
Ever since lunch, must have ordered something bad. But no, I still think he'll find his way there, and he's shown his quality. He's still getting game time there. I think this camp will be a good refresher for him, and he's just such a unique profile and player to our pool, and how he can flex even from midfield or the wing, be deployed in different areas of the midfield as well. He is, I don't know, almost like Musa in a way, in terms of his profile. There's no one like him. There's also nobody like Tillman. The things that he can do and drive the ball forward, connect play. He's very shifty. Good hold dribbler of the ball. And now obviously with his aerial threat too, seems to be a great area of success for our team here. So
hey man, set piece play, right? We're still the kings of set piece play. McKinney is powerful header of the ball. One of the best headers, probably in soccer, if I'm being completely honest. Like that dude always gets up. Our center backs are pretty strong. Yeah, it's crazy.
Austin, I do want to throw it to you though, with the midfield, right? Obviously, Luca, there's some concerns with playing time and some form of McKenzie, but Adams in the form of his life.
Yeah.
Do you think this Leeds move was the biggest move, the best move right before the World Cup for all of our USMNT players right now? I could argue it is. That's a huge, one of the most critical players on the pitch for us. I think that move might have been number one there.
Yeah, I think in terms of where Tyler was at before the season, right, where, last year he finished up with Leipzig, not really getting much playing time, right? He was kind of in the 18, but really didn't, he'd get some garbage time minutes, but really wasn't a main, player for them. He was kind of an afterthought. I think him getting his confidence back, especially being a leader on this team too, right? Like a confident leader and someone who's, doing well and having success, creeps. Yeah, it creeps into other players' performances as well, right? I think this is definitely a big move. I'd also say just the moves that Leeds did this summer, right? Brendan Aronson, his move. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but I really think, now's the time, that conversation's been brought up the past few months that I think he needs to be a starter in this team. And I think with no Tim Weah, like I said, we'll get to it in a little bit, but I think he really did himself a lot of good going to Leeds this summer. And both of them were kind of really positive moves.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, strength is our midfield. So even if it's not MMA all the time, we have so many other moldable, flexible players to throw in there. So I don't have too much more to add, just because again, that's such an impressive group that we have and a core we have.
Yeah, and I was going to say there is maybe a few snubs, right? So the first one that really came to mind was Georgie Mihalovic, right? And just not made his move yet, but signed his transfer deal to AZ this summer. So he'll be going there in January. So he was one that, again, he's kind of that, I don't know what you'd call it, maybe like a flex player, right? He's kind of played in multiple positions for Montreal and has a lot of success, kind of in between midfield and attack, right? And would make a lot of sense here, in this midfield position. Gianluca Busio was another player that was left off this roster, and another player who hasn't necessarily had the best start to the season. Venezia in general haven't had the best start to the season. So again, it kind of makes sense why he's not included here, but I think, maybe unless there's some more injuries, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm not sure he's in the best spot to, make the World Cup. And then one more that maybe necessarily isn't a snub, Pat, but a player that I was happy not to see on this roster, even though he's such a great guy off the field.
The vibes guy?
The vibes guy, Christian Roldan. So again, we know the story with him, right? Not necessarily the most productive player with the USMNT, but Greg seems to think, and others I guess seem to think that he's a great locker room presence. But I don't think we should bring a player solely on that. So I thought it was good to see him, not included in this the September roster. So I guess moving on to attackers, Pat. This is definitely by far the most tumultuous group of players that were selected. And I think this was, striker position in general, right, was the hot topic going into the September camp. Who is Greg going to call up out of, the 5 to 6 strikers that are really killing it right now and in good form? So
what a turn of events, Austin. What polar opposite than a year ago or even less in this conversation.
Yeah, it's crazy, man, how quickly things change. So to go into the forwards, we'll start off with some of the wingers, right? So Brendan Aronson was called in, Paul Arriola, right? So no Tim Way in this camp. So, Paul kind of gets the call, I would say, in his absence. Jordan Morris was called up, right? Crucial goal in World Cup qualifying to kind of help us seal the deal there. So, he's called up here. Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna were also 2 more attackers. And then we go to the strikers, right? So there's only 3 of them on this roster. So the 3 that Greg called up were Ricardo Pepe, Josh Sargent, and Jesus Ferreira. So, I had some time to marinate on this, right? I wasn't, the quickest to the roster when it was released on Wednesday. So I got to see kind of everyone's reaction to it and, kind of sat there a little bit, Pat, let it ruminate a little bit. And I think overall, I'm fine with this decision, right? I think the biggest striker that people felt was snubbed was Jordan Pefok, right? Who's playing great form. Union Berlin are top of the Bundesliga right now. He's been super productive for them, and has really, hit the ground running with them, right? He's been in such great form. When I look at the 3 strikers that we're bringing, I still think we're bringing the 3 most talented strikers. Now, obviously, Ricardo Pepe's form is definitely much to be debated right now. It is worth mentioning, right? Past 2 games, he scored a goal and has an assist. So, his form seems to be improving, and it seems to be, again, more of that mental block style of play, or just, team he was in, right? Augsburg, they beat Bayern this past weekend, but unfortunately they can't, score goals when Ricardo Pepe plays for them. So that's, one thing to talk about. Josh Sargent's in great form right now, right? He's on fire. He really fits what Greg Berhalter is looking for in the system. So I think, his inclusion makes a lot of sense. And then Jesus Ferreira has also been in pretty good form this year. He's gotten a lot of game time, with this team and has really kind of stepped up in his different moments. So again, Pat, I hear some of the complaints about, Pefok not being on this roster. I think when we look at some of those players, in defense, where we talked about, multiple outside backs, maybe for the World Cup roster, we should look to take 4 strikers instead of 3. But I kind of feel comfortable with the 3 strikers Greg Berhalter selected, at least for this camp.
Yeah, I'm glad you said at least for this camp, because I think, are you fucking kidding me, right? That's still PG there. I love that everyone's saying that. And I think they said that in Soccer We Trust and other platforms and social media. But it's just, I understand in terms of Greg's system, and I'm not saying that Sargent, Pepe, or Ferreira, right, they don't have the talent. I think they're tremendous players. Sargent, I'm really high in Sargent. I'm so glad he's back in form, because
I hope he starts.
A lot of talk. Yeah, I think he is. He was that guy before, and now he's kind of back into it. I think he could really push for Ferreira there and offers a little bit more in terms of what he can do. But again, Ferreira's been pretty fantastic for Dallas too. But yeah, I think Pefok, in terms of what he's doing for the best team in the Bundesliga, he won that scoring league title in the Swiss league. He's now proving it, right, with goals and assists here. Fantastic partnership he has with Becker as well, and that team's really fun to kind of follow now and watch. I'll admit I hadn't really followed them too much until their recent form in the Bundesliga, staying 1. We'll see if they can continue that momentum, but Pefok's had some pretty incredible goals, right? Like this one over the weekend, that impressive header and kind of the angle that he somehow beat the keeper through. That had a lot of power to it. The technique was fantastic. I mean, there's not many players that are able to pull off a goal like that. I think maybe we hold that Mexico miss against him, which is fair. Maybe a little bit too much, but I think he is such a talented number 9 that offers something different. I don't see how you can leave him off for Qatar. I'm okay. Maybe Greg knows what he can offer and doesn't need to see him right in this camp, wants to give others the opportunity. But I'll be pretty upset if he's not on that plane to Qatar.
Yeah, and I think I'll be similarly upset too. Like, you know, I said I think these are the three most talented strikers, but I think when you think about what you said, right, something different that he provides, right? He's more that poacher. He's also, again, in great form. So, you know, depending on what the form is like for some of these other strikers, if he can continue that, I think that would definitely be a big asset going into camp, or going into the World Cup, excuse me, just having that confidence flowing and kind of being, you know, the man going into the World Cup. Yeah, I think, yeah, there's definitely room for him on this roster. You know, once some of these other positions are sorted, but I kind of looked at him being left off similar to you, Pat. I think Greg, like you said, knows what he provides, which again is fair. Maybe Greg, you know, underestimates that a little bit, but I don't think having him in this camp to come on and, you know, make a substitute appearance is really going to move the needle in Greg's mind. But again, this is a fight, right? And he doesn't have that opportunity to kind of provide, you know, that look for Greg. So yeah, maybe this will hurt him in the long run, not being in the September roster. But I think if he can just continue to do what he's doing at his club level, and put the pressure on Greg to really make that tough decision, that's all he can do, right? That's you know, what he can control. So
yeah. And again, just back to what a great problem to have.
Yeah,
it's
having
good. All of these players back, and I'm really happy, like you mentioned too, Austin, with Pepe scoring, right? Finally, I don't know how long it's been for Groningen there, and seems like it's early 2 games, but the Eredivisie, yeah, it looks like he's going to take it by storm. I'm pretty confident in that. Just what a great kind of last minute change and move, and I think just being part of this camp, the things that he was able to do for the national team and get us even in this spot to Qatar.
Yeah.
I think this is a great kind of momentum booster here, refresh, really prove himself here in camp with the friendlies, and then back, you know, in the Eredivisie performing, because, you know, everybody goes through highs and lows like that, especially these young players, but Pepe has still so much potential and talent there. And I'm just happy for him, Austin. I'm happy that he has the shot at camp.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest reason, I guess, why I'm okay with him in this camp. I think he's the most talented striker we have, or at least has the potential to be the most talented striker. Still right now, I think his technical ability is on par with, you know, the other strikers we're talking about. He's got great size, right? He's a very tall player. He knows how to use his body. He makes pretty good runs. So yeah, I feel good. I think the biggest thing was just that same hurdle that Josh had, which was the mental side of the game and kind of the form, and
right.
just being in a tough situation at club level, to be completely honest. So yeah, I feel like we talked a lot about strikers. So just to move into the wingers a little bit, right? No real surprises here. Again, with Tim Weah being out, you know, Jordan Morris and Paul Arriola, I feel are kind of the two, you know, lesser talked about wingers here. So if Weah comes back, maybe, you know, Paul Arriola doesn't make the team. Again, maybe a player gets cut at another position group, but I think overall there's really no complaints here, right? The only snub I could really think of, and again, I don't really think it's that big of a snub, would be Conrad de la Fuente, and he's not started the season off so great. He's actually kind of struggled, so it's not really surprising there. The other one was Ferreira Balogun, right? Another striker potentially. He actually, it sounds like, got called up to the England U21s recently, so seems like he's going to kind of wait on his decision and see how this season plays out. And again, maybe, you know, he changes his mind after the September camp, but for right now, I don't think, you know, he's interested in playing for us. So we'll keep trying, right, Pat? It's a long marathon, not a sprint.
That's right. That's what we say in the recruiting world. You just got to keep, you know, prodding there, right? Show him how impressive we are by beating England in the World Cup. You know, with the talents that we have, you know, having the data points, results there, that'll sway him, right? And of course, Austin, your pitches have been tremendous on the show.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. So one day, hopefully, we'll see Ferreira repping the red, white, and blue. So yeah, I guess that's the roster, Pat. So overall, what are you feeling going into you know, these 2 games? Do you feel positive? You think we're going to get good results? See some good play from the team?
Yeah, I think obviously, unless barring terrible results or the score lines are brutal against us, I'm not too concerned. In terms of maybe tight games, draws, or tight losses or wins. I'm I'm feeling good. About the core we have. I'm really excited for some of these guys. And we've seen it with past World Cup rosters, and I think Herc Gomez is one that I know a lot of people talked about a while ago that kind of came out of nowhere, right, to make the team. And we've seen it with past teams. I'm excited who's going to be that dark horse, right, or that surprise that really just proves it in this camp. I want to see Scally, prove us wrong. Vines even coming in, silencing the haters, Mckenzie, right? And you can name lists and lists of players. I'm excited for some of those guys to prove their worth, see how they do in this small amount of time. And then on the flip side of that, right, putting some of those core guys, right, the Adams, obviously the center back, right, with Long and Zimmerman, who seem to be locks. Turner, right, this critical time for some of those guys to also really lock in minutes, maybe prove us wrong with their form, right, for a club, or again, prove us right if they are in form. But some of those core guys to really continue to build upon their partnerships. So I'm not really reading too much in the results from my end, but obviously I'd prefer some wins, but I do want to see some of those dark horses step up, and then also some of our core guys really, again, end this camp on a high before Qatar. So what are your thoughts, Austin?
Yeah, so we'll be playing Japan and Saudi Arabia. I forgot to mention our second opponent there. And yeah, I'm kind of in the same vein as you, and more actually looking at the team as a whole. So I think our performance against Morocco was probably our most complete performance, right? We really were able to kind of dominate them. We really were able to cement the style of play we're trying to play against that team. So I think against Japan and Saudi Arabia, that's what I'm going to be looking for. If we can play together as a team, look polished, right, and look like we can communicate well and be on the same page, because I think that's what's really going to be able to get us far in this World Cup is relying on the players that are on the field and again communicating, taking advantage of breakdowns in the defense, and also helping out when push comes to shove defensively for us. So I think that's my biggest takeaway. This window is kind of like that, late May, early June window leading into a summer World Cup where you kind of get those two teams that, not to say that, these teams are lesser in quality of us, but I think these are definitely teams that we can beat, right? I think these are going into them, right? We're looking to beat Japan. We're looking to beat Saudi Arabia. We shouldn't lose to these two teams. So I think that'll be the biggest thing I look for is just the continuity, the consistency, and us being able to kind of cement our style of play in both these games.
And quickly to add, that's a really good point that you brought up, because, and not saying it's like for like, from team to team, but if you're thinking from a Wales and Iran perspective, these two friendlies kind of make sense in that way where maybe we'll have a little bit more possession or be able to cement our style or the pressing, right? Obviously, we're not playing kind of that caliber to England, right? But I think these two friendlies can kind of line up and give us that, kind of data point and just kind of that comparison to some of those games and situations against the Wales or Iran. How we're able to do in those situations. So again, maybe not the top 5 or 6 teams in the FIFA rankings, but very comparable to what we're going to face in the group.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, and I think that's kind of why we schedule them too, right? Is kind of giving us those tests against opponents of similar caliber. So yeah, it should be fun, Pat. I know we're not going to do any streaming this time for these games. I think the Japan game is at 8:26 in the morning or some crazy time. So we hope you all enjoy watching the USMNT wherever you guys are at, enjoying breakfast somewhere. And for the Saudi Arabia game, I think that's like a 2 p.m. kick. So we're both going to be working that day. So unfortunately,
maybe a third monitor, for us and you all, right? If you're in school or you're working there, maybe you just have your phone under your laptop or an additional monitor there with a game on,
Yeah, exactly. And we'll be active on Twitter, I'm sure, and Instagram too throughout the game. So, So let us know your thoughts on this roster in the comments below. Let us know if you disagree with what we said, if there's any players you think we missed that would have been great to be called up to this roster. I know we didn't even talk about, Haji Wright or Brendan Vasquez. So I'm sure someone will comment about that, but let us know your thoughts. And as always, guys, like this video and make sure to subscribe to our channel down below.
And of course, like Austin said, we're going to stay active, right, in social media, Instagram, Twitter, continue to put out great content for you all, especially covering these friendlies, camp, what's going on there. I know we've seen USMNT, right, show some of those guys getting into camp, Gio and Scally kind of hanging out a little bit, right, that Germany connection. So, of course, we'll be active on the platforms.
Yeah, and this episode today is also available in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. So definitely check us out there. Leave us a review. It always helps us out. And Pat, I'm super excited for what's to come this week and next week. And yeah, it's gearing us up for the World Cup, man. I can't believe it's almost here.
I can't believe it either. End of September. This is it. This is the last camp before we see our guys getting prepped and ready in Qatar. It's going to go like this. So, I'm excited for a string of good performances, some players to really impress, and who's going to get on that plane, Austin, because, whoever is on there is taking us to the end.
That's right, because one day those players will help us in lifting the World Cup trophy.